What if I told you that India didn't just become a nuclear power, it outsmarted the world's greatest superpowers to do it? While the United States flexed its atomic muscles in Nevada, and Pakistan plotted its nuclear revenge in the shadows, India was quietly building a bomb under the radar of the CIA, the Pentagon, and the world. From defying crippling U.S. sanctions, to outwit America's spy satellites, to send shockwaves through Islamabad, India's nuclear journey is a story of science, strategy, and sheer willpower. This is not just about bombs, this is about brains. It's about a nation surrounded by enemies, underestimated by allies, and determined to never be bullied again. We reveal how India turned the tables on the global order, flooding America with diplomacy, silencing Pakistan with deterrence, and rewriting the rules of nuclear power. The backdrop: India's security nightmare. When India gained independence in 1947, it inherited not only a broken economy and fractured society, but also a hostile neighborhood. Barely 2 years into nationhood, India was already at war with Pakistan over Kashmir. But the real turning point came in 1962, when the unthinkable happened. China, India's northern neighbor and ideological rival, launched a surprise invasion across the Himalayan border. The result was a humiliating defeat for India, one that shattered the illusion of Asian solidarity and exposed India's military vulnerabilities. The message was clear: in Asia, only the strong survive. Then came the Indo-Pak Wars of 1965 and 1971. Pakistan, emboldened by U.S. military support, tried to assert dominance, but India's military managed to hold ground. The 1971 war was particularly significant. India not only defeated Pakistan but also helped create a new nation, Bangladesh. The geopolitical stakes were escalating, and India was right in the center. But the biggest shock of all came from China once again. In 1964, China successfully tested its first nuclear bomb in Lop Nur, instantly becoming a member of the nuclear club. That single event shifted India's defense thinking forever. Now, India wasn't just facing a hostile neighbor, it was facing a nuclear-armed one. For Indian policymakers, the writing was on the wall: to survive in a hostile region surrounded by two enemies, one with nukes and another desperate to get them. India had to change the rules of the game. It needed deterrence. It needed respect. And most importantly, it needed the ability to say no without fear. India's nuclear ambition wasn't born out of conquest. It was born out of necessity. A shield, not a sword. Science in secret, India's nuclear program begins. Behind India's atomic dream was one man, Dr. Homi Jahangir Babha. A brilliant physicist trained at Cambridge, Babha returned to India during World War II and convinced Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru that atomic energy would be the foundation of India's future, both as a developing nation and as a global power. With Nehru's support, Babha helped establish the Department of Atomic Energy, DAE, in 1954. The world thought India was interested in civilian uses: electricity, medical isotopes, scientific research. And that wasn't entirely false. But beneath the surface, India was laying the groundwork for something far more ambitious. During the 1950s and 60s, India participated in the US-backed Atoms for Peace program, gaining access to research reactors, enriched uranium, and technical know-how. Canada even helped build India's Cyrus reactor, on the condition that it would be used for peaceful purposes only. But as tensions grew with China and Pakistan, Indian scientists began to see the dual potential of nuclear technology. Using domestic ingenuity and the foreign assistance they'd already received, India began developing a parallel weapons program in total secrecy. Bhabha famously said, "A country's development depends not only on its economic progress but also on the respect it commands." And nothing commanded more respect in the Cold War world than nuclear capability. After Bhabha's untimely death in a mysterious 1966 plane crash, the momentum didn't stop. His successor, Vikram Sarabhai, kept the vision alive. India had no Manhattan Project, no multi-billion-dollar funding, no access to classified designs. Just a group of determined scientists working under pressure, in a country still battling poverty and famine. The goal was clear: demonstrate India's nuclear capability not just to Pakistan or China, but to the world. Yet to avoid international backlash, India planned to do it under the clever guise of a peaceful nuclear explosion. That moment came in 1974, and it, Pokhran, the day the world woke up. May 18, 1974. Deep in the deserts of Rajasthan, under a coat of silence and surrounded by sand dunes, India stunned the world. Codenamed Smiling Buddha, the underground nuclear test at Pokhran Test Range was India's first ever detonation of a nuclear device. The explosion was a technical success and a political earthquake. It was the world's first nuclear test conducted by a country outside the five recognized nuclear powers of the time: US, USSR, UK, China, and France. India had just gate-crashed the world's most exclusive and dangerous club. The global reaction was swift and furious. The United States, which had once cooperated with India on peaceful nuclear development, condemned the test. Canada accused India of breaking its trust by using the Cyrus reactor built with Canadian aid for weapons purposes. Sanctions followed. Nuclear fuel and technology transfers were cut off. India was now a pariah in the global nuclear community. But it didn't matter. The message had been sent. India had the bomb. And the calculus of South Asian security had changed forever. In Pakistan, the shockwaves were even more intense. Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto declared that Pakistan would respond at any cost. "Even if we have to eat grass," he said, "we will make the bomb." Thus began Pakistan's crash nuclear program with secret help from black market networks, Chinese collaboration, and rogue scientists. India had crossed the nuclear Rubicon, and there was no going back. But unlike other nuclear states, India didn't announce a doctrine. It wasn't threatening. It simply demonstrated. The intent was clear: deterrence, not domination. Internationally, India was punished. But domestically, it was hailed. The test became a symbol of sovereignty, strength, and scientific self-reliance. The world woke up on May 18, 1974, to a new reality. India was no longer just a developing democracy, it was a silent, serious nuclear player. And the superpowers had missed it all. Or had they? That brings us to one of the greatest intelligence failures in American history. How India flooded American intelligence. To understand how India pulled off its first nuclear test without the CIA noticing, you have to appreciate one thing: India didn't just build a bomb, it built a brilliant deception strategy. In the years leading up to Pokhran, Indian scientists and military personnel operated under layers of secrecy. The project used misleading paperwork, false travel records, and compartmentalized teams to hide the true nature of their work. Scientists from Bhabha Atomic Research Center, BARC, were officially assigned to soil testing and groundwater analysis in Rajasthan. But in reality, they were conducting high-stakes nuclear calibration. the Indian Army sealed off the area under the guise of military exercises. Equipment was moved during nighttime or disguised as oil exploration gear. The test itself was buried under 100 feet of desert sand, surrounded by camouflage nets and minimal electromagnetic signals to avoid satellite detection. Even the detonation date was uncertain until the last minute, just in case. And the name? Smiling Buddha. A spiritual symbol, masking one of the deadliest technologies known to man. It was a masterstroke in psychological misdirection. When the bomb went off, American spy satellites were hours too late. Intelligence agencies scrambled. The CIA, NSA, and White House were caught completely off guard. President Nixon, already hostile toward India, was livid. Intelligence analysts labeled it a catastrophic failure. But from India's perspective, it was a triumph of indigenous strategy over foreign surveillance. India had flooded American intelligence channels with noise, false trails, harmless reports, and diplomatic gestures, while doing the real work in the silence of the desert. This moment didn't just reveal India's nuclear capabilities. It exposed the blind spots of U.S. intelligence and the arrogance of assuming that only Western or Cold War superpowers could master such technology. For India, this wasn't just a bomb. It was a statement: we don't need your permission. Pakistan's urgent race to build the bomb. If India's nuclear test was a wake-up call, then for Pakistan, it was a full-blown alarm. Just weeks after India's 1974 Pokhran explosion, Pakistan's Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto declared that his nation would begin building its own bomb even if it meant economic collapse. He famously said, "We will eat grass, even go hungry, but we will get one of our own." The man who would make that dream a reality. Dr. Abdul Qadir Khan, a metallurgist who had worked at the Urenco enrichment plant in the Netherlands. In 1975, Khan returned to Pakistan with stolen blueprints and nuclear centrifuge designs, essentially giving Pakistan a shortcut to uranium enrichment. But unlike India, which operated in relative isolation, Pakistan built its arsenal with help from a clandestine global network. China allegedly provided designs and testing data. North Korea traded missile technology for nuclear components. Libya and Iran later became recipients of the same designs via AQ Khan's black market ring. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Pakistan's program accelerated, aided by the belief that it needed parity with India at all costs. While India focused on scientific self-reliance and strategic doctrine, Pakistan's approach was built on secrecy, speed, and survival. India now faced two nuclear-armed neighbors, China to the north and Pakistan to the west. The regional chessboard was becoming dangerously complex. The Kargil conflict of 1999 would be the first time in history where two nuclear powers engaged in direct military conflict, though limited and contained. The world realized just how volatile South Asia had become. The nuclear race wasn't about prestige anymore, it was about preventing war through mutual fear. But Pakistan's path, built on espionage and proliferation, would later come under heavy international scrutiny. India, meanwhile, was preparing for its next bold move, one that would shake the world again in 1998. Global sanctions, U.S. pressure and India's stand. India's nuclear ambitions didn't sit well with global powers, especially the United States. After Pokhran I, the world tightened its grip on nuclear technology. In the 1990s, pressure intensified through international treaties like the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, and Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, CTBT. India refused to sign both, calling them discriminatory. Why? Because the NPT allowed existing nuclear powers to keep their arsenals while denying the same right to others. India saw this as an institutionalized imbalance, a nuclear apartheid, so to speak. The US responded with multiple sanctions. Under the Glenn Amendment and Pressler Amendment, aid was frozen, technology transfers halted, and trade policies tightened. India's space program, atomic energy research, and even civilian aircraft development were hit hard. But India stood firm. It argued that its nuclear program was not for conquest but for credible minimum deterrence. Unlike North Korea, India had never threatened to use nukes offensively. Unlike Pakistan, it hadn't spread nuclear secrets. Instead of bowing to pressure, India took a different route. It flooded global diplomatic forums with reason, logic, and restraint. It framed its nuclear stance as moral, strategic, and defensive. In forums like the United Nations, India emphasized its commitment to non-aggression, non-proliferation, ironically, without being in the NPT, and responsible stewardship. The world may not have accepted it publicly, but behind closed doors, opinions were shifting. Washington began to realize something. While India was outside the club, it played more responsibly than some inside it. India's refusal to be bullied gave it a unique position, an outsider with insider discipline. The world would soon witness how this position would be formalized with an explosive return to Pokhran. Pokhran 2, India goes official. May 1998. The world once again turned its eyes to the desert of Rajasthan. Under Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, India conducted a series of 5 underground nuclear tests, known as Operation Shakti. Unlike 1974, these were not described as peaceful. They were military-grade tests, and they left no room for doubt. India had officially declared itself a nuclear weapons state. The tests caught the world off guard again. Despite advancements in satellite surveillance, India's elaborate secrecy protocol ensured the world learned about the detonation after it happened. President Bill Clinton reacted swiftly, imposing harsh economic sanctions. Military cooperation and high-tech exports were frozen. But unlike in 1974, India didn't flinch. This time, the nation was prepared for both the tests and the backlash. Pakistan, feeling cornered, responded within weeks by conducting its own tests in Shagai Hills, Balochistan. South Asia had now entered the nuclear age officially and irreversibly. But India followed up with the nuclear doctrine of no first use. This meant India pledged not to use nuclear weapons unless first attacked by one. It was a statement of control, not chaos. Operation Shakti changed India's strategic identity. It was no longer a nuclear outsider, it was a proud, self-declared member of the elite nuclear powers. Yet India never gloated. There were no parades, no saber-rattling. Just a quiet assertion, "We are ready. Don't test us." The international community, especially the United States, was beginning to reevaluate its stance. If sanctions weren't working, perhaps partnership was the answer. From enemy to partner, US-India nuclear deal. After years of confrontation, the US changed course. By the early 2000s, the geopolitical winds had shifted. The rise of China was now a shared concern. The Bush administration saw in India a democratic counterbalance in Asia and a potential ally in the 21st century world order. In 2005, President George W. Bush and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh announced the U.S. India Civil Nuclear Agreement. The deal was historic. For the first time, a country outside the NPT was being granted access to civilian nuclear technology legally and openly. The agreement lifted the nuclear embargo, allowed India to trade in nuclear fuel and reactors, and legitimized its civilian nuclear program on the global stage. In return, India agreed to separate its military and civilian nuclear facilities and allow partial IAEA inspections. Critics in the West saw it as a betrayal of the NPT. But supporters argued that India had proven itself more responsible than many signatories. India, once sanctioned and shunned, had now become a trusted partner of the US, not just in nuclear matters, but in defense, space, and technology. What had started as a standoff had transformed into strategic alignment. India had flooded American diplomacy with a narrative of mutual respect, and Washington finally listened. Today's reality, a global nuclear power. Today, India is firmly entrenched as one of the world's most capable and responsible nuclear powers. It maintains an estimated 160 to 170 nuclear warheads, with a diversified triad of delivery systems, the Agni series of intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear-capable fighter jets like the Mirage 2000 and Sukhoi 30 MKI, the INS Arihant, India's nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. India's nuclear strategy is governed by restraint. Its no-first-use doctrine remains in place, unlike China's increasingly ambiguous stance or Pakistan's open willingness to use tactical nukes. Moreover, India is investing heavily in missile defense systems, space-based early warning systems, and quantum communication, making its nuclear posture more secure and future-ready. Geopolitically, India has emerged as a counterbalance to China in the Indo-Pacific, a strategic partner of the West, and a leading voice in global non-proliferation dialogues, despite never signing the NPT. Meanwhile, Pakistan's nuclear arsenal remains controversial, with persistent concerns over internal security, military control, and the risk of tactical weapon use. The contrast couldn't be clearer. India has built a nuclear program rooted in discipline, deterrence, and dignity. How India outsmarted the world. India's rise as a nuclear power wasn't a miracle, it was a masterpiece. It outsmarted American intelligence in 1974. It outpaced Pakistan's rogue proliferation networks through discipline. It outmaneuvered global pressure with a calm, consistent doctrine. And it outshined others by refusing to be reckless with the most dangerous weapon ever invented. While America panicked and Pakistan plotted, India planned. Patiently. Strategically. Quietly. Its nuclear program was never about conquering others, it was about not being conquered. It was a shield, not a sword. A message to the world that a billion-strong democracy would not be bullied, bribed, or blackmailed. And in the end, the world didn't just accept India's nuclear status, it embraced it. From the deserts of Pokhran to the corridors of Washington, India rewrote the rules of power not through war, but through wisdom. India didn't become a nuclear power by breaking the rules. It did so by proving that the rules were broken and rewriting them for a new age.